friends, welcome back to the show. I am Sandra. If you are here for the first time, I have developed this podcast to be able to talk to folks within the LLM space. I am coming across so many successful ladies, so many smart, capable, hardworking, accomplished individuals, in particular women, and I wanted to take the opportunity to sit down with them and learn from them, because I feel like speaking with people that are deeply embedded in the LLM space, no matter the actual particular area they're in, is by far the most efficient and fun way for me to learn about it and keep up with it. So this is my effort to be able to understand it, and I hope it resonates with you and helps you out on your journey as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, by the way. I know how many podcasts are out there, and I really appreciate you choosing to spend your time listening to this conversation today. It's going to be a really fun one. I am talking to Naomi White, who is an engineering program manager at Cohere. She started her AI journey by joining DeepMind as executive assistant. She has been there for a couple of years and then transitioned to Cohere and then became promoted internally within the team as well. And now she's working directly with our modeling RAG team in London. And it's a really exciting area, as we all know. You might have seen the episode with Ola Pictus, who is part of the RAG team herself. We dive there a little bit deeper into what RAG is, what it consists of, how it's built, etc. With Naomi, we are talking more about joining the space, learning RAG, starting from scratch, being able to keep up, having fun with it, and the type of use cases Naomi sees on the market, but also explores herself within her team. We talk a lot about streamlining the processes of machine learning engineer teams. We talk a lot about overcoming the imposter syndrome, which is such a prevalent thing in the space, not only when it comes to non-technical people, but also for technical people themselves. No matter the amount of your experience, as Naomi put it, there's always somebody more accomplished with more paper published, with more years of experience. So we all feel this imposter syndrome, and the space is moving crazy fast. So being able to learn strategies on how to keep up and also having the right mindset for it was a very useful thing I took out of this conversation today. I am so excited for you to hear it. We are also talking a little bit about multi-step tool use in RAG. At the time of recording, the team was still working on it, and so we were talking about the early exploration phase, what it was like to start playing with it, what were the thoughts, the motivations behind choosing particular tools. We pay a lot of attention to RAG capabilities of our command models, and frankly, all our models are designed to create this optimal RAG stack. So on the one hand, you have generative models. On the other hand, you have also embedding models that work in tandem with RAG techniques to create the most grounded, the most up-to-date, the most timely context for our models to be able to really tap into longer documents that you're working with, or tap into the latest events in the world or in the particular area that you're working with, etc., etc. RAG has so many business benefits, but it's also very exciting technical endeavor to go about and try to solve the hallucination of the models. This episode ties really well with episode number 4 with Ola. It also ties really well with episode number 5 with Sylvie, where we talk about re-rankers and how they help RAG. It ties quite well with episode number 1 with Elaine Gao, where we talk about chat interfaces. We have recently released our chat interface code. We open source it. And thanks to that, you are able to now go to that repo, copy it, and start adapting it to your project and have a sort of like a ready recipe for a chat interface that's optimized for using different tools and using RAG techniques. You are most welcome to check out the multi-step tool use long chain integration. There is a wonderful notebook showcasing how our model's working with the tools. Jay Almer has a great walkthrough on this, and I am linking it in the show notes so you can check it out. I think you are going to come out of this combo encouraged and more lighthearted about what's going on in the space and where it's heading and what's your place in it, how you can possibly join it if you haven't yet. If you find it useful, you can help me grow the podcast by sharing it with a friend. Maybe they're interested in RAG, or maybe they're interested in joining the AI space and are wondering how to do that. This episode might be a wonderful encouragement for somebody like that. And other than that, I'll see you on the other side. I promised I am going to open with this question, so here it comes. So basically, you have a very, very unique pet of a friend called Mabel, and your dog is a legend in Cohere's London's office. I've seen you biking around London with it. I've seen it participate in high-stake meetings, in recruitment meetings. I've seen it greeting new folks that are coming to the office. So I wanted to ask you, how on earth is this dog such a sociable creature and garnering so much of people's attention? Is it just like an innate thing, or is it like a trained thing? How did that happen, that Mabel is Mabel?
I think it's a little bit of both. She is, I think, naturally quite a calm dog. So I've been quite lucky with that, but also a fair amount of training when she was a puppy. So a lot of socialization on top of that as well. So making sure she was out in public, seeing people, meeting loads of people, going on public transport. She went on tubes from when she was really, really young. So she's kind of completely undeterred from getting on the underground and riding it with me and going into work with me and coming back. All the noisy sounds that you think any other dog would be a little bit maybe scared by, she's kind of just bright and breezy with and is super adaptable. So but I think at this point, Mabel is effectively almost like the runner-up CEO to Cohere. She's so prominent in meetings, so well known. And yeah, she's just such a nice vibe to have in the office. So friendly and so welcoming. It's nice for guests when they come in.
It's so nice. Like I can tell you that, especially coming to the office the first time, like there's a degree of anxiety if you're not there every day, and she makes it smooth sailing for most people, as far as I know. So do you take her to the office every day or alternate? How do you do that?
Yeah, so when I'm in the office, I usually bring her with me. It's so nice that I always joke that part of the reason I joined Cohere was because it was dog friendly. And I don't think it's 100% a joke. It's definitely like a factor that brought me on board. And it's just such a nice thing to have. Like I know people that have joined recently always say that it's just nice that we have like a pet friendly policy. And I think it makes things a bit easier with your day, right? Like you're not having to consider dog care or anything else. Like you just know you can kind of bring them in with you and they'll keep you company all day and hang out with everyone else in the office.
Yeah, that's a really lovely feature. And yeah, I agree. Like not every office has a dog friendly policy or pet friendly generally. So it's pretty awesome that we have that. And she is adapting so well. So tell me, is it fair to say that your adventure with artificial intelligence as a field started at DeepMind when you joined as an executive assistant? And if you're nodding, so that means that.
Yes,
so that's fair to say.
Yeah, that's where it all kicked off.
So can you tell me a little bit about this moment when you kind of decided that this is the position for you and that this field is something that you could see yourself in?
Yeah, so prior to working at DeepMind, I was still working in tech, really kind of switched over from what I was doing before. I worked in a range of different industries and realized that tech itself had a very different kind of culture and approach, and knew I kind of was seeing myself continue within that field and didn't necessarily really think about AI per se. and had heard about a company called DeepMind and sort of started to investigate its mission and what it stood for and kind of the things it was creating and researching. I like kind of the fact that it was just so forward thinking. So creating things that kind of were beyond anything that I could have imagined as a kid. So I applied there and ended up in the science team, which I felt was kind of really like real world applicable. And just the fact that kind of it was creating technology that could be used by anyone. So I kind of look back to AlphaFold 2, which was a project that I was part of, and actually being able to predict protein structures without things like crystallography, which is like crazy expensive. And if you're in like a third world country and you want to be able to be like carrying out studies like this, it's just kind of out of the bounds of reach for some people, like monetarily. So the fact that this was open sourced, people could kind of access these protein structures that were like incredibly important. At DeepMind, they released a bunch of protein structures that related to the COVID virus as well. So that was just super impactful at the time and just like super accessible for anyone, whether you're kind of in a first world nation or a third world nation. And I really kind of like that, the social kind of impact of that and kind of breaking down those barriers. And that's where my journey's continued, like to Cohere as well. Language models are hugely accessible to the general public. I love the fact that I think it was kind of a month after I joined, things like ChatGPT kicked off in the space and everyone knew exactly what a language model was and not kind of this super complicated thing that was beyond the reach of anyone. And being able to kind of access that every day, asking it questions, getting it to help you plan like travel itineraries. I just think it's empowering people and allowing them to kind of make their day a lot more effective. So yeah, I think it's more sort of the real world impact that has really kind of like drove my journey into continuing in it into AI.
That sounds incredible. It also echoes kind of my motivations for joining AI as a space, generally tech as a space. I feel like there are people with so many different backgrounds that come to the tech space, and we all start from somewhere. We all have a unique perspective. Most of the people I know learned a lot of what they know by self-teaching themselves and just putting out educational resources out there seem to resonate with people a lot. That's something that I find out through my path in here. And I love that. I love that there's this spirit of kind of community of working together and working towards something greater. So being part of the AlphaFold is quite a treat. Can you tell me what it kind of meant that day to day, what it involved when it comes to your responsibilities, but also kind of like observing how the project was evolving and then launched?
Yeah, so from my side, at that point, I was an executive assistant. I was supporting the VP of Science, and a lot of it was kind of cross-functional. So I wasn't kind of deeply necessarily within the tech, but making sure that we were having update meetings, like the right information was being passed across, not only up to the VP of Science, but also to our CEO, who was like incredibly involved in the project. You probably have heard that Demis is like just despite kind of being at this leadership level, is like heavily involved in exactly the work that is going on within the company and really kind of takes a keen interest in projects and moving them forward. So yeah, it was just making sure that kind of that information was being like transferred, that projects were on time, that we were kind of ensuring that people were ramping up to launch in terms of like the marketing aspects. So whether it was reviewing kind of materials that were going out for like press releases or ensuring that the guy that I was supporting at the time was able to kind of meet various different interviews as well. We were contacted by like a bunch of different like papers within the space, like newspapers or like podcasters, things like that. So just kind of making sure that all those things were kind of teed up and ready to go. And also just kind of like keeping track of exactly how the project was progressing. Like I think that was kind of where I was able to kind of like dig into exactly what was happening kind of more on like the technical side, not obviously kind of having necessarily any like science or ML background myself. I could still kind of follow along with exactly what was going on. So yeah, it was kind of like a multifaceted piece, but a lot of it kind of was just around like the organization and like showing up and reviewing things and just ensuring that everyone was kind of in very, very tight communication. A project like this is obviously so cross-functional, so impactful that you just can't afford to drop the ball on it at all.
It sounds like an excellent primer for what we're doing at Cohere, and especially your
Exactly.
role. So I can really imagine how you made this kind of decision to take the next step and join Cohere. But why change at any point? Like, when did that thought come to your mind, and also why?
It's a very good question, actually. I think I got asked that question several times over when I chose to kind of leave DeepMind and move over to Cohere, because DeepMind is obviously incredibly well known in this space. It's a well-established company. There are a bunch of different projects that you're working on. It's not kind of just focused on one space, whereas Cohere is obviously purely kind of within the language model space. DeepMind is obviously, you have the ability to work on like various different machine learning aspects. So I very much felt at the time that I was at DeepMind for almost 4 years. It was an incredibly like impactful time. I learned a lot. I really enjoyed the fact that there was just so many different people that I could kind of be mentored by. I had some really incredible colleagues, but I really kind of felt that my tenure there had come to an end, and I was just seeking like a new challenge. So somewhere where the company itself wasn't as established, where I could really kind of make my mark and have more of an impact and kind of create change. And I was looking to do kind of more outside of my role itself. So being an executive assistant at DeepMind gave me a huge amount of autonomy, actually. And the VP of science that I worked with really did allow me to kind of dig into various projects that were maybe sort of out of scope for a general executive assistant role. But I thought I could kind of expand beyond that. And maybe there was a possibility for coming into a startup that would allow me to maybe trial out like a few different roles. Like, I think it's kind of well known that within startups that basically every team always needs an extra hand. There's always going to be more work than people. And I really like that ability. And I think also like having a little bit less red tape around situations. There's not a ton of approvals for things necessarily within a startup. You can move faster, quicker. It's a lot more scrappy. As I mentioned earlier, I really liked kind of the mission itself of the company, what the company was doing, and kind of the like societal impact of language models. I thought it was just a lot more tangible and a different project to work on, completely different from being within the science team. So it was like my ability to try my hand at something new and learn a completely new kind of set of things.
Okay, it makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like one of the big drivers was that you were looking to change the stage where the project is at. So at DeepMind, the organization was kind of fully baked already, while at Cohere, we basically doubled since you joined, and things are moving fast and things are changing really fast. So it's like really dynamic and exciting, and there's more adrenaline and more impact that you can do. In terms of your role specifically, was there something that you are looking forward to change in terms of kind of collaborating with the exec that you're supporting, maybe getting better mentorship, or was it kind of purely on the organizational stage level, so to speak?
It was purely kind of on the company side of things and like the organization side of things, just looking for somewhere where it wasn't necessarily such a well-oiled machine, somewhere where I could have much more impact, bring in my own sort of processes, trial and test like a couple of different things and see what worked, because stuff that's going to work in one company is not necessarily going to work in another. And I just really wanted to kind of have that true impact, I guess. I will say within DeepMind, the science team itself, like the organization piece was just such a well-oiled machine. Like everyone coordinated and functioned really well. Obviously things arose, like nothing was kind of necessarily smooth sailing all the time, but I think it was kind of a better structure that had been refined over many, many, many years. Whereas kind of I knew that coming into Cohere, it was still a relatively super new company and just kind of hadn't been through that life cycle as of yet.
How did you find out that you like organizing people's work and tying the knots and making sure things are moving forward the way they should be?
It's a very good question. I will delve right into my very, very initial background when I kind of, after university, going into kind of the job market. I worked in sort of a more of a sales-based role, and realized quite quickly that that was just something that I just didn't enjoy and wasn't necessarily very good at either. And kind of just took like a long, hard look at myself and was like, what are the things that I like? What have I enjoyed in my life so far? And I've just been one of those people that I think organization comes very naturally to me. Like I can look at something that is like a complete mess and figure out exactly what the next steps are to do to kind of like tee up people and make sure they're working on the right things, or like how best to kind of run a project, like what can we do with all these different key components and what things fit together and how can we move forward with that. So I think it's just something that comes very, very naturally to me. I'll also give another insight into my personal life. So for example, at New Year's, the one that just passed, I said to my friends that why don't we kind of just have like a review of the year? And I said to my manager afterwards, I was like, I did the most program management thing that I've ever done at New Year's. I made my friends do presentations just before the clock struck midnight of what they'd achieved in the year and like what they were looking to achieve next. And it was kind of like a big reflection and like a celebration of the things that we'd done and like what we were looking to do kind of the next time. But like putting that all together into a presentation and telling them kind of like the best way of like approaching that was just the most program management-y thing that I think I've done and in my personal life. And I was just like, okay, yeah, this makes sense why my job is what it is.
That's hilarious. That definitely sounds like it springs out of you almost. Like you cannot really contain it. It's just there. Do you consider yourself just generally organized, or is it more your focus is more on kind of this cyber being that is a company where there's a lot of different minds and tasks and things that need to move forward?
Yeah, I think my strong set is definitely within like organizing machine learning engineers. So I will say like certain parts of my personal life are chaotic, so they don't always necessarily translate into like the day-to-day of what I do at Cohere. But that's definitely something that I recognize that is like a strong skill of mine. I can go into kind of any ML team and kind of figure out exactly what kind of the key like people issues are, or like why things aren't functioning that well. Why isn't this project moving forward? Oh, okay, it's because these two people have very different views on something. How best can we kind of come to an agreement, a solution where we can move forward that will make both sides somewhat happy? They might not be super pleased because their particular idea hasn't been chosen, but where is like the compromise? So like kind of really digging into those situations, which I think upon first look possibly are things that you might kind of diminish and say that they're not like the most impactful thing to do, but I think they're genuinely something that can really drive a project forward.
Oh, certainly. I think people element is huge. Having the right culture that attracts folks, having kind of a smooth communication system channel throughout the very complex project that you're usually working on. I think it's a huge component of a successful machine learning project. So kudos to you. Okay, so another question about shifting gears. So you were actually, I think, the very first person at Cohere that was promoted internally. There was an opening while you were an executive assistant to the generative modeling executives, I guess I can call it that. And so the opening was the engineering program manager. And you decided to go for it, you got it, and now you're working in this role. So I find it incredibly inspiring to even, being able to talk to you about what was it like to kind of shift gears internally, and how did you again realize it's time to move on, and how did you prepare for this next move, or was it kind of all organic?
I would say it was partially organic, a lot driven by me and my interests. I think I mentioned earlier, within a startup, I don't think it's necessarily always applicable to every single startup, but I think in a lot of places you have the ability to really kind of like define and shape your role, because things aren't super rigid. People want help. People always want an extra hand. And if you're interested in doing something like, let's say, marketing, for example, like when I first joined, I was super keen on kind of ensuring that we kind of were sharing the culture of Cohere to people. So when you're looking for a new job, you could possibly go into kind of like the Cohere LinkedIn or the sort of social media presence that we have, and kind of tap into like, oh, okay, that's what a normal day in the office is. So I'd kind of post random updates around what we were doing here, and found that very, very fun, and kind of like an additional thing to do on the side of my day-to-day work. But another thing that I pushed to do here was more sort of project management. And I think as an executive assistant, it's a role that's not super well defined in every single company. I think it varies depending on what industry you're in, and also like kind of what you decide that you want to focus on, and also what's available within the company. And for me, project management is something that's always been central to my executive assistant approach, and something that I did at DeepMind, and continue to bring it across to Cohere. And we were kind of transitioning a lot internally, like things were changing a lot, as you kind of see within a startup. The org structure isn't super fixed. Phil Bluntsome, who is our generative modeling lead, organizes that entire org. There was a lot of change there when I first joined, and kind of just figuring out exactly how we wanted kind of the teams to look. What were the teams? What were we even working on? And I was able to sort of dig into that and really truly support beyond just kind of the foundational parts of being an executive assistant. And one of those teams that we were creating at the time was something called RAG, retrieval-augmented generation. A very tiny team, first consisted of 2 people who are the leads of that team right now, and just saw an opening and was like, cool, this is something that seems super interesting, really impactful, doesn't really have anyone to kind of organize it, but we do want to productize it. And I just think they need a helping hand. So just really kind of dug my feet in there and was like, this is the team that I'm helping. I'm maybe going to let a few things drop on the executive assistant side, because it's something that I like truly deeply care about and want to pursue, and see how that goes. And maybe start creating kind of a job spec for myself where I list out the things that I like doing within this kind of in-between role that I'm doing. And that's kind of what progressed me to this point of becoming a program manager. Phil was incredibly supportive throughout that. And I remember having a conversation where he was like, either an executive assistant or you're a program manager. And I was like, okay, cool. And he was very much in my corner to be like, actually, like, if you want to continue being an executive assistant, that's totally cool with me. Happy for you to continue in that space, because I like that you support me and you do that very well. But equally, you're doing a really good job as being a program manager, and I fully support you moving into that space and us looking for someone else to take on your current role. So that's kind of where it all kicked off. Obviously, they had this opening for an engineering program manager internally. We're also still hiring for more and more people. It's just an org that's growing really rapidly. I think people are really kind of responding really well to the impact that we have within teams. But yeah, just moved across to that. My current manager and I had a conversation, and he was very much kind of like, I've just heard good things about what you're doing in the space, and I'd be really keen for you to join our team if you're interested. And it all just went from there. So it was just a very kind of like, it felt very natural to be moving into that space. And I cannot imagine not being in the team that I'm in now.
That sounds really amazing. I'm so glad that you had the kind of room to roam around first and figure out what were the tasks that you were really enjoying at Cohere, and then it translated to actually moving into a new territory and kind of officializing what you were already doing before. That's so cool. So one of the reasons I am digging so much about your career choices here and there is because I feel like there is a huge amount of imposter syndrome in our space. And in particular, I find in conversations with folks that come from non-technical backgrounds, remain in non-technical backgrounds in this space, or are interested in coming a little closer to the tech, they feel very intimidated by the language, by the concepts, by how little they know, and what kind of formal education they are lacking in the space, etc., etc. And it's very easy to kind of extrapolate and feel like you don't belong because of this. Something that I have felt here and there throughout my journey as well. Um, so this is why I am poking here, and I want to learn as much as possible for folks that are, feeling a little shy about this and feeling like they don't belong, like they don't have enough of the background, the know-how needed. Can you tell me, what did it look like for you once you were getting warmed up with artificial intelligence related concepts, and then specifically LLM concepts? What kind of you definitely sound like a natural kind of learner, and like you're really curious about things and really curious about digging and learning by doing as well, and probably learning from people. But if you could just like try to maybe look back and think of the types of things, conversations, learning strategies that helped you the most on this path, I would be really curious to find out.
Yeah, for sure. And I really recognize what you say around imposter syndrome. I think it's something that I think we truly all feel, even people that are kind of super senior technical leads, there will always be someone within the space that's published more papers than you, that might be more knowledgeable, has worked at like various different big tech companies. And I think to say that it's kind of only for like non-technical roles is definitely kind of an underestimation if kind of people see it that way. Just because I think, yeah, it's just a daily occurrence for everyone within this space, because it's so fast moving and there's so much happening all the time. It's like impossible to keep on top of everything. But I think that's the fun part of it. There's stuff that's always adapting, always developing. There's open source stuff coming out all the time. And there's just like an endless list of things to learn. So I think that's what makes it very exciting. But in terms of kind of like my personal way of tackling that, I think it is just like truly recognizing again that it is something that everyone feels, and also talking to like your colleagues about that. I think especially as a woman within tech, you can often feel like there is a bit of an imbalance, especially within kind of like technical teams. You can often see that there's sort of a higher ratio of men maybe within the field, and like, how does that make you feel? Do you feel welcome in those spaces? And I'm really lucky to have some really, really good mentors within this space. So I mentioned earlier about one of my teams, the retrieval-augmented generation team. And I will say a huge part of my learning has been through the two tech leads there. They are very well known within the space. Patrick Lewis, who I work with, published a really impactful paper around RAG. It's
Invented
very
frag.
Exactly. He invented RAG. He is the pioneer of it all. He is just so down to earth and always ready to answer any of my questions, no matter how silly I feel they might be, and has never told me that any of my questions are dumb. He's very happy to answer anything that I kind of throw at him, and take me through things when I truly am just like, this makes no sense. Like, I feel like I don't know anything on this call. Like, I like, if I have a bit of like a meltdown on something, he can pull me back and just be like, no, okay, this is what you know. And I think that's true of actually a couple of the engineers that well, a lot of the engineers that work at Cohere. I've kind of got people that I have a good relationship with within our platform team, who will also talk me through things on that side. And I think it's just identifying those people within, if you're within a company, identifying those people, or if you're maybe outside the tech space, is there anyone that you can kind of like maybe chat to on LinkedIn, on another platform? Is there like a Discord that you could join? There is like a Discord for Cohere where you can kind of keep up to date on things. We do run like Q&As and Ask Me Anythings and things like that. So maybe there's someone within that space that will be able to help you and guide you. I will say that someone within our platform team, initially when I was kind of moving into this engineering program manager role, was teaching me how to code and was spending time every Sunday sitting me down, taking me through the basics. This is completely outside of kind of their working scope. They were not tied to doing that, but they were just genuinely doing that out of the good of their heart, basically, to teach me and then help me understand better, which I thought was truly just the best thing. And I think that kind of has really like truly driven my learning. Another part of it as well is just kind of keeping up to date, like following various people on LinkedIn is really fun. I always get kind of like a short, sharp download from various different like figures within the space. I really enjoy actually updates from one of our like annotation providers, Invisible, Albert Chun. He posts various different updates, like these are the people you should follow within the space, or these are the various different things I've captured from this video that I've watched. And it's just like snippets that you can almost read in the morning when you're just having your coffee and keeping updated. So I think, yeah, various different like media platforms can help you with that. And I would also say just playing around with models as well. I think that goes a really long way. So to work in this space, you need to be able to have, I think, just have a regular interaction with what you're building, with the product itself, and noticing where things might go wrong, flagging that. Like you can really kind of dig into like what the issues are and how you can help improve that. Like I'll play around with Coral. So having like a chat or a conversation with it, even just like silly stuff like, oh, what should I name this annotation effort? What should I like help me out with this like kind of project plan, and just kind of really testing the limits and bounds of stuff and then sending feedback back to the company, because obviously that's going to be super helpful for all the teams within Cohere. So I think it's a multifaceted thing, but yeah, definitely the biggest piece I think is having that kind of interaction with engineers and getting them to help you learn and guide you through your journey.
Would you consider yourself more of a sponge that is kind of entering this world and taking everything in and then processing internally and then being able to kind of function fluently in the world? Or do you like the approach where you have a certain structure around your knowledge, you first go for the fundamentals, then you enter some specific niches that are necessary for you, you dig out definitions of things. There's like a lot of shortcuts, a lot of acronyms, a lot of lingo in the space that on a daily basis I find I learn something. What's your approach towards it? Is it more like spontaneous, or is it more structured?
I would love to say it's structured purely because I want to come at it from the organization perspective. But I think it's more on the sponge level. I've always said, no matter kind of what I'm doing, it's like a process of osmosis. Sitting in meetings and just soaking up that information, I think really is the best way for me to learn personally. And I can sit in a meeting and it can be a bunch of kind of complete jargon, but I will be noting those things down and refining them over time. So like, let's say you're in a particular meeting on a particular project, and initially like day one, don't understand anything. I can guarantee that within sort of 3-4 weeks, oh no, I have some understanding of what's going on, purely because I've been refining my notes during that time, calling out the things I really don't understand. And the meeting itself is not the place to necessarily be asking those questions if it's like a very pointed meeting and we want to achieve a goal, but taking those questions away and saying, who can answer that best for me? Is it the tech lead? Is this like a really complicated question that maybe they can help me out with? And it's super urgent maybe. Or is it someone who's maybe a bit more junior within the team who has a bit more time to spend with me and walk me through literally everything I've written on this page and say, like, you can throw this out, that's not relevant. This is the definition of this. Let me walk you through it. This acronym means this. You should go and search in this space and read this paper to learn more about this. So I think it's very much just kind of like very kind of like piecemeal, lots of various different things together and soaking them up and bringing them all into one. And I think because of the way in which the teams that I work with it is a little bit more scrappy. So I don't necessarily have the time to kind of create a structured plan around my learning. It's just a case of like digging in and just getting all the knowledge that you can as early as possible and moving forward with that.
How is your paper reading practice?
It definitely could be better. I'm definitely going to say that. That was one of my goals for sort of towards the end of last year. I was like, I'm going to take some time out over the holiday period and read a bunch of papers. And so far, haven't haven't done so well on that goal, but have like carved out time each week now to be like, this is the time that I need to focus on paper reading. And I know we're going through quite a big push within a couple of our projects at the moment. So I know that like I need to carve out the time now afterwards when there's going to be a lull to be able to do that.
That's really cool. I find that conversations with people basically help me understand papers better, especially if I'm talking to somebody that has read it and well processed what's inside of it, or with the author, ideally, just like the bigger picture of it. What was the assumption? How did it turn out? What were the surprising things that they've come across in between? Things like that. In terms of like the nitty-gritty things, I feel like I can spend a lot of time processing that and not feeling like it's internalized properly inside of me.
Yeah, I totally get that. I will say there's something that I was super keen to kind of kick off in the engineering program management team. We recently had an offsite, and one of the things that I suggested was that we have a session each where we have a piece of read. It might be a paper, or it might have been like an article, kind of there, something that's relating to the work that we do, and then almost doing kind of like a book report on it and presenting back to the team and just doing key takeaways, and almost having kind of like a page where we store all of those things, so that like anyone within the team can go, oh, I want to learn more about safety, for example, like what papers are relevant for me to dig into, or like is there something where it's someone's already read it and they've done the key takeaways for me, and I can like use those for like a quick download, and then what else like can I read to kind of supplement that as well. So yeah, it's definitely something that I'm like conscious of for other people as well, to try and make sure that we're like bouncing off one another, and like not everyone having to read like 1,000 different things each, that we can kind of work off one another's information.
Yeah, that's a really cool attitude towards it, because I totally agree. Like, we are moving so fast. You can wake up one day, log into your Twitter account, and find out that your research was rendered useless overnight. It's scary, but it's also so exciting, because it's like the learning never ends. So
Exactly.
for folks that like to nerd out on learning things and to find satisfaction, that this is definitely the field to be at right now. Was there? I'm looking for anecdotes right now. Any silly situations with acronyms where something surprised you, where you were assuming it means this and it turned out it means something else? Any funny stories related to just trying to push through this kind of dense jungle of terminology and kind of insider lingo?
No, I can't think of anything that immediately comes to mind, but I do like making acronyms. I know that's a problem as well, because of course no one's going to know. And there was something that we think we used to have within the onboarding deck here, where it was just like a bunch of acronyms that Cohere uses. And just to kind of explain to people, okay, that's what this means. Like if you see like LFG, obviously this is not a technical term at all, but like if you see LFG, what does that mean? And like I remember seeing that over and over again actually at the beginning and being like, I have no idea. And like I think my language has transitioned so much during my time here. It's the most like, I think I was not very Gen Z language at all when I first joined, and now I'm like ridiculous. Like I just use a lot of different phrases, and I'm like, who am I? What is this? Like, what is this? So I think on a non-technical side, my acronym usage has got worse. But yeah, it's just always fun, kind of like asking what things mean, or like kind of making up things in your head to be like, oh, okay, that could be like these random letters, what does that stand for? Yeah, I can't think of any particular scenarios, sadly.
Yeah, John Moore created this demo of just basically using command to come up with the definitions for different acronyms. And we were working together on a TikTok scenario where I'm in this like corporate scenario, this like very serious atmosphere, and I'm trying to like use language models to understand what's going on during a meeting. So I actually in the real life find myself Googling stuff to find out every now and then, but it's the same as in your case. It's more on the kind of culture culture level, which is I think it's really fun. Like I think the language we're using is really fun. I really appreciate that it's this kind of ridiculous nomenclature. So, question about your RAG team. I want to dig into that a little bit more. Okay, so it sounds pretty innocent because you saw that this is this tiny team that needs support, and you were like, okay, so I'm gonna go and help them out. And then it turned out that it's one of the most exciting research spaces at the moment, whether it's business, whether it's research. Everybody's looking into RAG to solve hallucination because A, it is exciting in itself, but B, it also brings a lot of business value once you're able to do that. So before we get into anything else, I wanted to ask you about RAG, the way you understand it, the way you would explain it to someone without your background, without the background that you're having being inside of it.
That's always a good question, actually. So I would say kind of in terms of like a language model, it's trained on like a corpus information that is almost like immediately outdated. So whatever data you're putting into it up until let's maybe even kind of refer to like news articles up until the 4th of September. If you're asking it about an event on the 5th of September, it's going to have absolutely no idea, or it's going to hallucinate, more than likely hallucinate and make up a scenario. However,
it rarely gives up.
Yes, exactly.
Unless you explicitly ask it to give up.
But by using RAG, you can retrieve information from various different sources. So it might be a document that you've uploaded that you want to retrieve information from. So it's like a ridiculously long document that you're going to ask it kind of what was the business rate for this building on this date, and it will be able to accurately retrieve that piece of information and also cite where it's come from within the document, which I think is like the additional part of this. To also bring it back around to kind of like other sources as well. One of those is web search. So bringing it back to kind of the news article situation. Yep, this language model has been trained on everything up until the 4th of September. It's now the 15th of September, and a big kind of thing has happened. There's been a new president in a country, and I want to know about kind of the inaugural ceremony. And you can ask it that information, like who is the current president of the US? And on the 4th of September, it was something different. On the 15th of September, it's a new person. It will be able to kind of go in, retrieve that information from a web a URL that's up to date and be able to present that information back to you. So it's still on the user to judge the factuality of that, but they can ground it in a particular source. And with that citation, it means that user can say, okay, the answer, this is highlighted, this part of the answer, and that directly comes from this news source, which I can click into and verify myself that this was published on the 15th of September, and this is the most up-to-date information that I need. So I think it's just like kind of a much more kind of like reliable, like much more timely, much more accurate way in which of using a language model, and can retrieve anything that's kind of used for like day-to-day usage to like enterprise usage. So when I kind of mentioned that business rates example, people will want to train on be able to retrieve from things like their kind of internal wikis, stuff like that, where like an employee can say, oh, like what's the HR policy on this, and just get an immediate up-to-date response. And it kind of takes out that usual step of maybe having kind of posing that question internally. It's immediately like that information can be retrieved by the language model and provided back to the user.
So does it mean that we're able to prevent models from hallucinating completely, fully? Like, are we going to be able to arrive at the scenario where, given good enough information sources, good enough tools, the models will be kind of our trusted partners in whatever tasks we set out to collaborate on?
I think eventually that will be the case. Right now, there is obviously still, I would say, a chance that the model can hallucinate. It doesn't completely rid the language model of doing that, but it's much more likely that you're going to be able to verify your answer and say that is kind of much more factual information. There's still that step of kind of the user judgment, because again, let's say you're retrieving from the web and it retrieves from an article that's maybe from a news site that's maybe not quite so mainstream. That's the user to judge whether they kind of think that that is an accurate source or not. And again, it's kind of down to the user in terms of like, everyone has different like news preferences, right? Like I read particular newspapers and not others. So I might feel that a source from X newspaper is much more trustworthy than Y newspaper.
Yeah, I felt that I was using RAG early version of it to choose a backpack, I think, and I was getting quite some cool results, and there were links to different websites. I was like, is it the type of website that would have kind of the fashion sense and kind of the product quality sense that I would trust? So it was definitely like, it's definitely subjective, I would say, because
Absolutely.
style is something subjective. It doesn't have to be like true or false, but it can be just like, it's not me.
Yeah, and this whole process can be refined. So like over and over time, we will heavily annotate for particular tasks, and for annotators, we'll provide guidance kind of around what's kind of like more of like a trustworthy source than another. So if you're seeing something that's like on Reddit, probably less likely to use that kind of as something that you would cite compared to maybe an article that came from a BBC News.
Okay. I don't want to get into the discussion around the trustworthiness of both of these, but I get where you're going. So how do you make it happen as a team? What do you focus on day to day? What are you trying to optimize? What are you trying to put together so that people can benefit from RAG using language models?
Yeah, so there's various different kind of, at the moment, we're mostly kind of refining the model. So there's been kind of a lot of focus work going into that. We had like a very sort of long like ramp up phase in actually creating the retrieval-augmented generation model. And now we're kind of just moving on from that into kind of like the next stage and visualizing what we want to come next. So looking into things like tool use is kind of one of the work streams that's coming off from the team, getting the model to use a particular tool to be able to answer the user request. So quite like a tangible one to use would be maybe like kind of a calculator, for example. So hooking into that to be able to get the answer to like a math problem. One of kind of the things within our team as well is that we have quite like a heavy focus on annotation as well. Like we want really good, high quality data going into the model itself, and have kind of a very unique way of running that and doing that. That's very much proprietary. And on top of that, we also support kind of other teams within the generative space. So our work is mostly sort of post-training stuff, but we can advise on kind of earlier stage stuff. So working with other teams and working with the teams that are sort of building our core command model itself.
Okay, so let's talk about tools a little bit. So this is kind of, I know that this is kind of the latest focus of ours, and it's going to be a really exciting year for tools, I think. So what is falling under the umbrella of tools? You mentioned calculators.
Yes.
I can imagine different types of APIs, different types of programs, different types of processing tools, I guess. Well, now I'm using tools to explain what tools are, but yeah, like let's put a little bit more color into this. What are the tools? What kind of tools are possible for the model to collaborate with?
Yeah, so it can be any number of tools. Like we've kind of had like in the initial stages of kind of like scoping this out, we have selected particular tools and sort of trialed out and annotated for particular things. But there is obviously this possibility of kind of going into this zero shot space. So a user can suggest a tool and the model can generalize and be good at using any number of things. So we don't have to predefine it. We don't have to annotate per tool. So to give you kind of examples of particular tools that people might use, it might be kind of like a weather application. So kind of getting the most up-to-date responses on like what the weather is in Toronto today. Another thing that might be kind of quite a good kind of like business use would be like a finance tool. So retrieving things from like up-to-date the stock market. I'm trying to think of another kind of it could be, sorry, go ahead.
I have some question towards the examples you've mentioned. So let's say LLM is using the weather app or the finance app to retrieve the data about particular user question. Is it because that data is more complex, more fuller, better quality, rather than a simple search online that would retrieve some sort of information for the model? Why would I go for a specific app in order to find out what's the weather like in Toronto instead of going to the search directly?
Yeah. So part of it is kind of that information being retrieved is a lot more complex. But also the web queries for those things may not always be like quite accurate or maybe the most up to date or the most timely. So hooking into a tool like basically kind of grounds that a bit more and makes it a bit more like verifiable. And again, if it's a really complex use case, it's not something that like a web search could perform. So that would kind of be the reasoning as to why to use tools.
Is it possible to use multiple tools at the same time and kind of have it informed models, reasoning, and outputs?
Yeah, so this is kind of where we're going into sort of more of like the multi-hop side of things. So one tool action call informing another one and just chaining a bunch of different things one after another. And obviously that's kind of a very kind of new and exploratory space and something that our team is kind of digging into and trying to learn a little bit more about and like kind of how to actually like build that and action that.
I guess in theory it could be like we ask a question, we type in a prompt that is more of a complex one and that involves retrieving information from multiple sources. So we ask both about the particular time when the particular stock was at a certain price, but also asking about the weather, and are trying to combine it for some reason. I don't know why we would do that, but hypothetically we could, and then the model can kind of go back and forth and then come back to us with the best information synthesizing. It's really, it really feels like we are moving in the direction of how our brains work a little bit, because we are pulling information from many different sources, trying to kind of synthesize it, and definitely sounds like it will allow for more complex reasoning, more complex engaging conversations with the model, and not feeling like it's your younger brother that you have to explain stuff to and kind of keep it at a certain level of complexity, otherwise it's gonna backfire.
Exactly, yeah. And it's not necessarily down to the user then also to piece that up all of those responses. So again, like you say, if it's like a chain of different calls informing one another, you'll get the eventual answer as like a whole rather than having to be like, that was that answer, that one, that one, that one, almost like showing you're working out type thing and then having to like piece it together yourself and work out the answer. You've just got one simple thing kind of as the end output.
Yes, it's for lazy people, which is what we are, and I'm really enjoying the direction we are taking.
Anything that can cut corners.
Exactly.
And speed up my day.
Okay, so how did you scope out these initial tools? How did you decide which ones do you want to focus on? Was it because you're using them, or was it because you felt like they're like the most common ones among people, or you were like most curious about how they are going to actually interact with the model? How did that work?
Initially, it was kind of things that were maybe a little bit more simple to annotate for, to build, and just to kind of trial and test it in like very, very early stages. And then kind of moving on to this point of being like, okay, what will our users want? And doing kind of a bit of like product research into what exactly people are requesting. So our like product strategy team would kind of go out, consult people as to like what they thought they'd use in kind of a tool use scenario. And obviously something like a finance tool would like very much kind of fit the bill for that. So that's kind of how we've arrived on those different tools.
Can you tell me here which tools in your experience so far work great with LLMs and which ones need more work or are still kind of in this exploration stage and might not come out of their successful?
Yeah, so web search technically itself is a tool. So I would say that is like the most successful one. That's something that kind of has like a very easy everyday use and has been used heavily by kind of whether our customers or people kind of we can verify internally through Cohere users like how much excitement people have around kind of being able to retrieve from the web. So I think that's kind of like the biggest one right now. But even kind of things like the calculator is kind of, it's just a fun one to do. And I think it's nice to kind of see that you can convert like emojis into things and the model will understand that and kind of come out as like, create a calculation based off of that. So like what is, if X equals like an apple and this 5 equals this, then like what is the answer? And just playing around and having a bit of fun with it. And I think internally that has like had like a very nice response. And again, kind of the weather app as well has been quite like a straightforward one to annotate for. So have seen quite like an easy kind of like people are very easily able to use that.
RAG is getting better and better and more robust, and models are plugged into more and more tools out there. Will it change something for the models themselves in terms of the size, in terms of the architecture, in terms of the number of data they have been pre-trained on? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's not always necessarily down to the size, as we've kind of seen that some of these smaller models like Llama can perform really, really well, despite kind of not necessarily being as many parameters. But I would say it's context length that's a big one. So in terms of like creating a preamble and also the information, like the kind of code that it's processing, you may need kind of a longer context length to be able to do these things. So that's something that we're seeing more and more about models that are released. It's kind of like the biggest thing, like how many tokens the model kind of has. So it might be like 100K, like we might need even bigger than that kind of thing. And everyone's kind of pushing for like the highest amount right now. So I think that's like the biggest thing that we kind of are looking forward to change for a RAG application.
Got it. What is preamble? Can you define it for us? Would it be like the very first prompt that you give to the model so that it knows how to move forward with the entire conversation? How would you explain it to us?
Yeah, it's almost like an instruction for the model, right? So you'll tell the language model, you're a language model and you're meant to speak in this specific style. And you want answers to be, and responses to be like short and sweet, or you might want them to be more like verbose. It's kind of all the instructions that you want the language model to kind of know so it can inform the way in which it's creating an output. So you can even include things like stuff around like what tools it has access to in that preamble, or any kind of number of instructions. That's kind of what the preamble is for. And it can be a very short preamble. Like I said, you're a language model and you've been trained on this and you are meant to speak in the style of a pirate and it needs to be under 100 words or something. Or it can be something that's a lot more complex.
I can sense Nick Frost's influence somewhere there on the pirate side of things. Speaking of which, have you played with any fun use cases yourself? Talking to the model, asking it to behave a certain way, to work with certain situations that you found cool while building RAG?
Yeah, so I think I'll hark back to various different kind of like fun annotation exercises we've run. I think more just from like an entertainment purpose, but thinking about things like, again, like speaking in the style of a pirate and just making the model really adaptable to like various different styles and not overfitting to a particular one. So being like, write a letter to your local counselor in the style of a pirate, or writing kind of a book report so it can be phrased to someone who's under 5 years old, so like baby style language, and just fun. I kind of like doing that side of things, like playing around with like the style and like the way in which it's responding, rather than kind of sticking to these like super like sharp like business use cases. It's always good to have a bit of like a play around and a bit of fun.
Definitely. So do you use Rag daily? Do you use Rag for actually helping out at work or maybe in your personal life somehow?
Yeah, so if I found that our model is really good at kind of summarizing various different things. So we have kind of like an effort where we're really focusing on that within RAG, but creating like grounded summaries for things. So if I kind of want to condense a bunch of information for myself, that again, I think we were talking about, like we're all very lazy and we want to kind of find like the easiest way to do
Very.
things. Yeah, I'm 100% a lazy girl, and I will use the model for things like that, and just to kind of like condense information for me that I might find a little bit too long. And also I use it for like kind of fun purposes as well. So we kind of entertain ourselves a lot within kind of the RAG team, and also within the sort of generative modeling team, and more like I mentioned about Gen Z type stuff, but we're having a couple of jokes around like dating and things like that between a couple of members of the team. We were like, okay, well let's ask the RAG model about this. What is Riz? And like can you kind of like explain that to me? So it'll be able to kind of not only give you the explanation, but give you a bunch of like sources to check back into and learn more about this particular style of language. And then just posting screenshots of that or sharing links to your colleagues just internally. So I think, yeah, it's a bit of both. Can use it for actual proper organizational stuff, but also using it on the side of like, let's just have a joke and see what our models can do. Because you know what, it's just a bit of fun.
That sounds really sweet. So do you feel like, do you have an intuition for where we're going with LLMs powered by RAG? One way I'm thinking about this is we have this operating system that we open and it has access to different tools, and we converse with it to help us figure out things and, I don't know, sort through email, respond to emails, calculate taxes, whatnot. It kind of feels like we will be able at a certain performance level to pull something like this off. Do you have an intuition about it yourself, like where we are heading into, what kind of product enhancements and kind of everyday life situations in the future that we can expect?
Yeah, I think for like business use cases, you'll see more of this like crop up in like internal chatbots. So I mentioned kind of like maybe more of like a HR based, or like you're wanting to retrieve from your internal wiki to ask about a particular like HR policy or something. So I think we'll see kind of a rise in that, just because people want kind of I know working at various different previous companies, it's really hard to find that information in like Google Drive or wherever else, and RAG can really kind of like enhance that search. So I think we'll see a lot more of that. I also think we'll see kind of more of it from kind of the tool enactment side of things. So being able to kind of retrieve information from a particular tool and then be able to build that out and maybe into kind of like a project plan or a portfolio and build a report for you. So I think a bit more of that. And then I think also in the day-to-day, like if you, again, I use Google so much on my like day-to-day basis just to kind of find out information. Isn't it much easier to kind of like have a little chat to a language model where you can have like a very much like natural language conversation and not having to do a particular kind of like keyword search for things, and also get that information that you need, and also kind of follow through to those websites where it's kind of retrieved that information from. So I think we'll see kind of like various different use cases, and I'm interested to see kind of where it goes in the future, as I think customers are still very early stage in kind of understanding what RAG is and what they actually want to use it for. And more often than not, I think we're educating them on what the possibilities are. So I think once they start to sort of grapple with that a bit better, they may kind of have different intuitions as to how it will be used. So I think that will be the next stage of defining it.
Incredible. And what are you most looking forward to in 2024 when it comes to RAG?
I I'm really excited about building our team out further, and I'm really excited about kind of this tool use piece. I think getting to a point of being able to allow the model to zero shot any tool, so you can just kind of, the user can define that, and then it's able to actually use that without any previous kind of like training. It would just be incredible, I think.
Agreed. For folks that have come across zero shot for the first time, it's essentially just the model coming across a completely new tool, not being trained to deal with it in the future, in the past, and just going for it and successfully using it. Yeah, like having a model that is so versatile and so kind of successfully spontaneous for different occasions sounds definitely like a dream. Awesome. So finally, where can we get hands-on with the RAG you're building, and how should we get started with it?
So I would say you can head over to Coral, our chatbot, and you can interact with it there. And you can also head over to our playground with Cohere. So jump into that and you can actually directly interact with the models and also have a bit of a play around as well. So it depends like how technical you want to get. If you want to play around with things like the temperature and a particular model that you're using, you're able to do that within our playground. So I think those are kind of the first stage steps. I would also say there's like a bunch of content online that Cohere has produced to like really kind of give you a bit of like solid background information into what exactly RAG is, what our like chat products are, what our various different endpoints are. And you can access those via the blog. We have the LLMU, again, another acronym to add to the pile, but that's kind of a education piece around the various different products that we offer and just generally kind of the LLM space. So I would jump into that if you're looking to kind of learn a bit more.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the convo today. I really enjoyed it, learning a little bit more about what you're cooking there and what's coming when it comes to RAG. Keeping fingers crossed, and I'm going to follow your work in 2024.
Thanks so much. It's been great speaking with you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I don't know about you, but I found this episode really freeing in the sense of all the pressure that we put on ourselves, being able to catch up with the latest and the greatest of models, of people, of the concepts that are circulating in the LLM space. I think it's good to give ourselves grace from time to time and acknowledge that we are all in it and we are all trying to grasp it, understand it. We're all testing it out, trying to conceptualize it somehow, whether in technical or business side of things. And it's a journey. If you enjoyed the podcast episode, please share it with a friend, rate your experience, like it, let me know in the comment section on YouTube, particularly if you're watching it there, what your experience was. Other than that, I'll see you in the next one. You can follow my journey at all socials, particularly X, Instagram, and TikTok at It's Sandra Kublik. All of them have the same handle, so it's easy to find me. Thanks for tuning in once again and have a good one. I'll see you in the next episode.